Welcome back to another episode of Occult in the Ordinary, where we examine the elements of horror and other spooky stuff present in non-horror games. In today's episode, we're talking about the Jak and Daxter series. We're going to go over the first 3 games in the series, starting with Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. This game begins with Jak and Daxter heading off to the spooky Misty Island, and it's here that we're introduced to this game's antagonists, Gull and Maya. And it's also where Daxter gets turned into an Ottsel and our adventure begins. Misty Island is the first of very few spooky locations showcased in Jak and Daxter. Not too long after the opening cutscene, you're able to travel back to Misty Island and explore freely. The rocky and desolate island is riddled with giant animal bones. It's actually pretty reminiscent of the elephant graveyard from The Lion King. It's unknown if the bones were here long before the lurkers arrived, or if the lurkers were directly responsible for taking down these gigantic creatures. For those that are unfamiliar, the lurkers are the primary hostile force you'll be up against in your quest to collect power cells and stop Gull and Maya's schemes. It's easy to dismiss most lurkers as low-level grunts that are more pests than actual threats. However, several lurkers utilize weapons crafted from wood and stone, and their innovation demonstrates a fairly impressive level of intelligence, especially since we've seen some lurkers operate drills and even cannons. So it's not like the lurkers would be totally incapable of taking down such large threats. These lurkers are even decked out in their own bone armor, so it's possible that the lurkers hunted down large creatures as a way to obtain food as well as resources for creating weaponry. It's actually the lurkers themselves that make Misty Island such an unnerving place to explore. No friendly faces inhabit the island, as it is essentially the lurkers' HQ. But the lurkers themselves aren't very scary. I know I just went on and on about how they're probably way more capable than we give them credit for, but they look like that. So, lurkers actually come in a variety of shapes and sizes, with most of them being pretty tame looking. However, there are definitely some lurkers that lean a bit more onto the creepy side. Take for instance the mother spider lurkers. These lurkers are found in the spider cave, go figure, and they spit out a toxic projectile to attack. They can even summon baby spider lurkers to assist them in battle. Luckily, you can easily dispose of spider lurkers with an uppercut, but if you decide to hit the spider with a spin attack, the spider's legs will pop off and it'll swing around on its web. It'll even spray out this purple blood as it spins out of control. The spider cave also features these gnawing lurkers, which are giant centipede-like creatures that crawl around on the wooden poles in the area. The gnawing lurkers might look intimidating, but they're really just big cowards. If you get close to them, they'll hide inside the wooden pole they're climbing on. So there's really no reason to be scared of these guys. Just lob some fireballs at them with yellow eco and carry on. Snowy Mountain has these lurkers made entirely of ice. Their appearance alone doesn't evoke any fear, rather it's their method of attack that can be pretty shocking. In a flash, these lurkers will sprout giant icicles from their body and charge towards you. See, most lurkers are pretty sluggish in their approach, and some are even completely stationary. So to have a lurker just barrel towards you is enough to send you into a brief panic. Okay. Enough beating around the bush. We're going to talk about the most terrifying member of the lurker family. The lurker shark. Let me just set the scene for you. It's the early 2000s, and you're up late on a Saturday night playing Jak and Daxter on your hand-me-down PS2. The hazy glow from your CRT illuminates a small corner of your room. For the next several hours, that 19-inch screen is your whole world. You spend time laughing at the intro cutscene, and after a while, you finally gain control of Jak. A fully seamless 3D world is in the palm of your hands, and you couldn't believe it. A game without loading screens. You run around Sandover Village and get acquainted with the colorful cast of characters. And there's one man that asks you to rescue his muse from Misty Island. Near the docks, you find a boat, but it's not working. It's not much cause for concern since Misty Island didn't look too far. You make a risky move and step off the dock and into the waters. Another small burst of amazement. Jak can swim. Hours of playing through Sly Cooper and Sonic Heroes conditioned you to steer clear of any body of water. But you can swim, so you start swimming and swimming. Slowly but surely you make your way to Misty Island. Everything is going smoothly until you hear it. The sound of a guttural roar from the ocean's depths. The sheer terror that the lurker shark emits is nuts. The way the creature announces its presence with a roar, along with a thumping heartbeat that grows faster and faster as the monster closes the distance. Then when it's all said and done, you're just left wondering what happened. This moment was the origin of thalassophobia for many. If it's any consolation, the lurker sharks serve as a way to prevent players from venturing out of bounds. So you only really need to worry about the lurker sharks if you try swimming off to nowhere. Or so I thought. A bit later into the game at Rock Village, there's a man who offers to fix the bridge for 90 Precursor orbs. And while the bridge is definitely in some pretty bad shape, it's not like I really needed it to be fixed. I could just hop across the platforms, or swim across if I'm feeling so inclined. Yeah, the lurker shark is here too, just to make me terrified of ever entering a body of water again. But it wasn't just the lurker shark. Terrifying waterbound threats were in so many games that I played. I play Banjo-Kazooie and there's Snacker the Shark. I play Super Mario 64 and there's the giant Cheep Cheep. I play Psychonauts and there's a weird watery monster hand thing. I don't know what was in the air in the early 2000s, but they really didn't want you going in the water. Which sucks because they made so many gorgeous beach levels. Anyways, back to Jak and Daxter. Something neat about the lurker shark is that they're actually acknowledged by the characters. If you approach the broken boat near Samos's hut, Daxter will say this.
See the size of the bite that lurker shark took out of the fisherman's boat? We best stay way clear of them. I don't think we can tackle a creature that dag nasty.
I think it's really neat that the lurker shark is woven into the game's world instead of just being some random thing. I really can't tell if I like the lurker shark's explanation because it's a neat little piece of world building, or if it's because explanations bring about some level of comfort for the terror. Moving away from lurkers and Misty Island, there's really only one other creepy location in the entirety of the game, that being the previously mentioned spider caves. Teeming with insect-like lurkers and pools of dark eco, these caverns are nothing short of eerie. Just watching the gnawing lurkers is enough to get your skin crawling. One of the power cells you need to get here is at the end of a pathway that is full of spider eggs. Before you even head down the path towards the power cell, you can see the eggs bounce and squirm with anticipation. The moment you step foot onto that path towards the power cell, the spiders will burst from their eggs and hunt you down. Even with the power of yellow eco, the sheer number of spiders can easily overwhelm you. It's best to just run for the power cell, then escape while you can. I remember the absolute frenzy I felt as I scrambled for the blue eco to use the jump pad and escape. This area made me really consider traveling back to older areas and scrounging up all the power cells I needed to reach Golan Maya. But after screwing up the fishing minigame for the third time, I decided to just suck it up and carry on with the spider cave. Another power cell in the spider cave tasks you with platforming your way around this scaffolding. In the center of all these wooden structures, you can see a giant piece of technology. It looks kind of like some mech. It was likely created by the Precursors, which are a mysterious race of ancient beings that created all sorts of weird technology. All we know about them at this point is whatever Samos can tell us, which isn't a lot. This statue always made me wonder if this is what the Precursors truly looked like. The face of the mech looks like some sort of bug, so it's fitting that they would appear in the spider cave. They've got these giant eyes and a long snout that look kind of like a proboscis. In fact, the Precursor bots look extremely similar to flies. And this idea of the Precursors just being some giant, omnipotent, all-knowing flies was enough to creep me out, as if the spiders weren't enough to deal with. There are also several Precursor statues scattered around the world, and you can even speak with them.
This must be a Precursor oracle like the sage always goes on about. I hope they weren't as ugly in person.
Who awakens the oracle? express the light within. From before time, I have watched and waited for the true hero to return. Present to me 120 precursor orbs for each power cell I contain.
The first time I spoke with a Precursor statue, I could feel my blood run cold. Their deep and rough voice comes completely out of left field, and the way the camera zooms in on the statue and the background music completely fades out really emphasizes that the Precursors are not to be taken lightly. The longer I thought about the Precursors, the more my fear for them grew. In my kid mind, the Precursors wore a face resembling flies and had a voice that sounded like a growling animal. It's awful because they sound like this in all 3 games and I never got used to it. I was really excited and nervous to see the day where the true form of the Precursors were finally revealed. Yeah. Aside from Misty Island and the Spider Cave, there really isn't much else when it comes to frightening locations. I will say though that I was pretty scared when I first arrived at Rock Village. The village itself isn't the scary part, rather it's the giant lurker off in the distance. This is Claw, and he's the one behind the destruction in the village. Just hearing him roar from the cliffs really creeped me out as a kid, and I was always really worried that he would manage to hit me with one of those flaming boulders. If you stare at Claw, you can see him repeatedly lob boulders at the village, but as far as I know, he can't actually hit you. I hope. My worst fear was that he would knock me into the waters with that damn lurker shark. Moving on to Jak 2, we have to start with a look at that intro cutscene. Jak 2 opens up with Jak and friends preparing to ride a Rift Rider through a Rift Gate. After fiddling around a bit with the tech, the gang managed to power up the machine and prepare for takeoff. With the Rift Gate now open, a giant monster tears through the portal along with a flood of smaller creatures. The Rift Rider is quickly launched into the Rift Gate, and Jak and Daxter are teleported to the middle of some high-tech city. Jak is then captured by men geared up in red armor and sent to prison. For 2 whole years, Jak is kept locked away, all while he is being tortured via dark eco experiments. Daxter finally comes to the rescue, begging Jak to say something, and we hear his first words.
I've been looking for you for 2 years! Say something! Just this once! I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Jak bursts free from his shackles and transforms into a demonic creature. Just seconds before tearing Daxter to shreds, Jak manages to regain his composure and the duo make their escape. Whew, man. When I was a kid, I watched this opening cutscene between the spaces of my fingers. That giant monster that appeared in the Rift Gate was horrifying. I was actually afraid of beating this game because I knew in my heart that that monster was definitely going to be the final boss. I got far into the game, but never ended up beating it because I didn't want to face that thing. I'd even start a new file. I didn't care. When it cuts to the prison, all you can hear for a brief moment is Jak's screams as he's being pumped full of dark eco. To know that he endured this torture for 2 years is incredibly disturbing. And lastly, there's our first look at Jak. A result of years of exposure to dark eco, Jak dons a nightmarish appearance in this form. What's interesting about this design is that his skin in this form looks very similar to Golan Maya's skin tone. It appears that prolonged exposure to dark eco can cause this gray-blue color in the skin. Another feature that Golan Maya possess is the yellow color that has replaced the whites of their eyes. It's a lot easier to see in the official art for these characters. Many lurkers also share this same trait. Jak on the other hand has pure pitch black eyes. It's possible that Jak was infected with dark eco to a degree even higher than Golan Maya, further mutating his eyes. It's both heartbreaking and horrifying to see Jak's colorful, happy-go-lucky disposition get broken down. Now, all of the things we just discussed were notably way darker than anything we saw in the previous game. The last game's scariest monster was a bright orange shark. Now, in this game, it's a giant bug dragon abomination. Before we go any further, I think we should discuss the very clear tone shift between the first and second games. It's funny because when I was a kid, Jak 2 was the first game I played in the series, so I just assumed the whole trilogy was all dark and gritty. Then after a while, I finally played the first game, and I just couldn't help but wonder where everything went wrong. The short answer is Grand Theft Auto 3. In October of 2001, GTA 3 came out and sent shockwaves through the gaming industry. I don't want to turn this into a history lesson, so I won't dwell on it too much, but I wanted to bring it up because GTA 3 had a very clear impact on a ton of games, Jak 2 being one of them. There's this really awesome well-made video by Jay's Reviews where they talk about Jak 2, and in the beginning of the video, they briefly go over GTA 3's influence on the Jak and Daxter series. I bring it up because they showed off a very interesting clip that I also wanted to share here. The clip originates from Tim Schafer's Devs Play, a series of videos where Schafer comes together with developers to play through a game that the devs worked on. Season 2, Episode 7 of Devs Play focuses on Crash Bandicoot, with the guest being Jason Rubin, co-founder of Naughty Dog. A few minutes into the video, Rubin talks about how GTA 3 changed the gaming industry and directly affected their work on Jak 2. And after watching this clip, I immediately understood why Jak 2 went for such a darker tone.
This Grand Theft Auto 3 thing came out and utterly changed the expectations of the gaming community. And like literally overnight, everything changed. We had already started working on Jak 2, and I remember doing a focus group and 2 8-year-olds were in this focus group. And I was like, so what do you think? And they acted like 16-year-olds, like 8-year-olds. Well, the graphics are good, and we really like the gameplay. We like what you're doing and the expansion of the universe. Really, this would be a fantastic game for our little brothers. And you're like, you're 8. What are you playing? Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And it just changed everything.
The whole video is just really insightful as to what goes on behind the scenes of game development, and I really recommend it. Episode 8 of Devs Play even focuses on Jak and Daxter specifically, so give it a shot. Links to both Devs Play and the Jay's Review video can be found in the description. After that whirlwind of an opening cutscene, your first mission is to escape the prison. The first mission does a great job at establishing the tone and further divorcing itself from its previous entry. When you initially got control of Jak in the first game, you were able to freely explore the beautiful Sandover village. Now you have to escape a ghastly prison. Instead of running across the sands of Sentinel Beach, you're scampering across the cold steel of a futuristic jail. The only colorful things to look at here are the flashing lights on the nearby terminals and the putrid air flowing through the vents. All while this quiet and unnerving track is crooning into your ear like a wicked lullaby. As you venture out past the vent shaft, the alarm systems start to blare and a robotic voice alerts the guards of your attempt at escape. The music picks up, and suddenly you're fighting your way out. The situation begins to settle down as the number of guards begin to dwindle. During your escape, you come across a dark room with red lights unveiling the path forward. Take one step into that room and a swarm of guards begin firing at you from the floor below. Their bullets narrowly make their way through the holes in the grating beneath your feet. Shortly after this, you slide down into a flooded room and finally escape from the prison, though the robotic voice from earlier is quick to undermine your success.
There is no escape.
This opening level made me feel so anxious. At the time, I didn't realize that the guards couldn't actually capture Jak. If any guard ended up killing me, it just meant that I would have to restart from the last checkpoint. No, as a kid I was under the impression that if I failed to escape, that meant that Jak would have to endure more of what we saw in the opening. The thought of having to see something like that again was enough motivation to escape without dying once. My biggest hurdle in this mission was getting past the room where the guards shoot at you. It just comes completely out of nowhere. My fingers were dancing across every button on that controller to get out alive. It's actually really funny because the guards have the worst aim I've ever seen. It was just something about the combination of the harrowing music, the flashing red lights, and the sheer number of guards that really discouraged me. Outside of the prison, we're finally able to explore the vast Haven City. While the city itself isn't inherently frightening or creepy, I felt that it was worth mentioning the overwhelming feeling of oppression and hopelessness that's laced in every corner. The muted colors of the concrete city paired with the somber track that plays as you explore creates a real moody vibe. The only splash of color you're going to catch is from the armor of the Crimson Guards. Their bright red armor sticks out like a sore thumb, and if you happen to piss them off, the Crimson Guards will pursue you relentlessly. They will come in droves to ensure that you're taken care of. operating Hellcat cruisers and even using turrets to take you down. The first time I ever alerted the guards, that rush of anxiety I felt during the first mission came flooding back into my system. But after my third or fourth time alerting the guards, I just stopped caring. My friends and I even made a game out of it. We used to annoy the guards, then see how long we could survive on just a hover bike or even the jet board. I also just wanted to mention that Haven City always reminded me heavily of Midgar from Final Fantasy VII. Prior to the release of FF7 Remake, I imagined that Haven City is just what it would be like to explore Midgar in a 3D world. There were just so many similarities in terms of general aesthetics. Haven City is even divided up into various sectors, just like Midgar. If Crimson Guards are chasing you, you can hear them call out to one another, alerting them to which sector the chase is taking place in.
High-speed chase in Sector 4! Expect fleet into Sector 5!
The ruler of Haven City, Baron Praxis, resides in a giant palace high above the city, just like how many of Midgar's upper class live on a giant plate above the slums. I really needed to bring it up because I think about it every single time I replay Jak 2. The residents of Haven City are vastly different from the NPCs you meet in Jak and Daxter's first adventure. Years of living under the dictatorship of Baron Praxis has hardened the people of Haven City, creating a slew of intimidating characters. The first that comes to mind is Torn, the leader of the underground rebellion. His cold disposition is a complete 180 from the NPCs of the first game. Even Daxter, who's quick to make fun of just about anyone, hesitates when he realizes who exactly he's dealing with. Though it doesn't take long before Daxter gets comfortable.
Render assistance if needed. Now get your squirrely ass out of here.
After doing a couple of odd jobs for Torn, you get to meet Crew at the Hip Hog Heaven Saloon. Crew used to make chills run up and down my spine. Something about him just made me extremely uncomfortable. Maybe it was how after every line he spoke, he sounded really out of breath.
Good, eh? Baron sent his goons to harass me as usual, eh?
Or maybe it was how he floated all over the place in that little space chair thing he sits in. Or maybe it was how touchy he was with Daxter. Conversations with Crew felt like I had stepped waist deep into raw sewage. It didn't help that the saloon itself had some pretty menacing decor. The walls of the saloon are covered in a myriad of metalheads. Don't worry, we'll talk about the metalheads soon. Along the walls you'll also find the lurker shark. Ugh. Maybe that's why I felt so uncomfortable in this place. After seeing the shark, you're probably wondering now, what does Jak 2 do to keep you from swimming off to nowhere? I'll just warn you right now, it's not nearly as exciting as the lurker shark.
This is a restricted area. Defenses activated. I am authorized to use force. Trespasser neutralized.
Yeah. At the Hip Hog Heaven Saloon, you also become acquainted with Tess. While she initially came off as cold when you first met her and Torn, here in the saloon she's actually pretty friendly. In fact, she's a little too friendly at times. Her and Daxter have a bizarre relationship. When I was a kid, I thought that Tess had just adored Daxter in the same way that someone might love one of their pets. But there are definitely some moments where they just it's just too much. Especially some of the scenes in Jak 3.
Here's a nice boomstick for your sidekick, baby. Go give him hell, boys. Then come back, and I'll scratch you behind your ears.
It's so weird because Daxter is technically human, just trapped in the body of an Ottsel. But does Tess know that? I mean, there's some time between Jak 2 and 3, so it's possible that Daxter explained the situation to her. But I don't know, it's weird. Now that the scene for Jak 2 is set, I want to highlight some of the game's fright-filled missions. Let's start with the first mission at the pump station. This mission serves as your introduction to a new enemy type, the Metalheads. These creatures are leagues more horrifying than any of the Lurker family. These Metalheads bear crimson skin, armor plating, and an iconic skull gem glowing at the center of their heads. These alien threats definitely know how to make an impression. The ones we face in this mission are pretty weak, but it's still exciting to finally see them in the flesh. The Metalheads were teased in the opening cutscene between Errol and Praxis. In this scene we learned that they were hoping to turn Jak into a weapon capable of turning the tide against the war with the Metalheads. It's crazy to think that the entire city is at war with these things. I mean, the ones we face here don't seem too powerful. They only take 2 hits to defeat. However, over the course of the game, we're introduced to more and more Metalhead types. each one more savage than the last. In the mission at the pumping station with Sig, we get to see bigger metalheads that can even wield weapons. When you start imagining legions of these creatures attempting to invade Haven City, it starts to make sense how they're able to waste Crimson Guards with ease. The mission where you need to destroy turrets in the sewers does a great job at demonstrating how chilling the metalheads can be at times. Right off the bat, you hear that haunting tune from the beginning of the game and you know it's about to get real. As you explore the sewers, you'll sometimes need to step on these switches to turn on the lights, and it seems pretty obvious that sooner or later, you're gonna find something hiding in the dark. After you destroy the first turret, you have to walk along these ledges in front of these chain link fences. You don't even think about it until you're walking past the second chain link fence, the camera swings over, and this happens. Yeah, that jump scare was another reason I hesitated to play this game as a kid. I started to think that maybe I was playing a horror game disguised as an edgy platformer. What's really fun about this metalhead jump scare is that if you react fast enough, you can kill it. Then if you don't, the metalhead will retreat into the darkness and just watch you. After destroying the second turret, you'll find a metal pathway guiding you forward. However, the path quickly collapses and you're stuck. Head around the corner and you'll find a pitch black room. The only source of light is the dim glow from a swarm of metalhead skull gems. At this point, I was convinced that I had unknowingly picked up a horror game. This scare is so good. There's no way to turn back. All you can do is turn on that light switch and face the metalheads. Luckily, the metalheads will stay frozen until you step on that light switch, so you at least have time to whip out your scattergun and prepare for the slaughter. I wish we had gotten more missions that emphasize the horrific nature of metalheads, because they really are terrifying. In the mission at the Underport with Sig, you get introduced to a one-of-a-kind metalhead.
Shooting this is only gonna get it mad. Run!
All you can do is run from this thing as it's completely impervious to attacks. Even when you think you've escaped, it just keeps on coming, all while you're forced to listen to the creature's dozens of feet scuttling towards you. When you finally make your escape, you're not given any time at all to relish the victory.
You and me, side by side. Nothing'll stop us, cause we're...
I think this is the first time in the series we see someone die on screen. Or at least, it would have been. There's another chase segment in the mission where you explore Mars' tomb. The difference here is that the pursuer isn't a metalhead. After Daxter messes with his staff, a boulder starts rolling after him. We suddenly have control of Daxter and have to run to safety. It's pretty cute how this mission is a very clear homage to the Crash Bandicoot chase levels. We're even playing as a little orange animal guy. It's great. Then, halfway through the chase, something breaks out of the boulder. Having a giant spider thrown at you all while you're getting used to playing as Daxter is extremely panic-inducing. The spider doesn't even have a skull gem, so it's likely not a metalhead, but I'm not sure if it's a lurker either. The only similarities that it bears with the original spider lurkers is its red and black coloring. However, we are 300 years in the future, so it's possible that maybe new variations of spider lurkers have sprung up. Either way, I'd argue that the metalhead centipede is more terrifying solely for what it ends up doing to Sig. The last thing I want to talk about in Jak 2 is Core, the leader of the metalheads. While most had assumed that he was a docile old man, we get to see his true nature revealed at the construction site. We are finally reunited with that revolting beast from the opening sequence. Being able to see him in his entirety didn't make him any less frightening. What really does it for me is his numerous bug-like features. The wings, the legs, and the two sets of eyes make Core look like a giant mutated insect. He's not the only one. A lot of metalheads resemble bugs. There's even a subspecies of metalheads called metal bugs in the Daxter spin-off. We get to face off against Core at the heart of the metalhead nest. Core is attached to the ceiling by these long strings of a mysterious substance and frequently fires off metalhead eggs from his tail. The metalheads that hatch from these eggs are smaller, crawl around on 8 legs, and sport a long tail with a stinger at the end. It's like Core is the queen bee to the metalhead population, not only serving as their leader, but also playing a role in the production of metalheads. When you get Core down to his last health bar, he breaks free from his binds and chases you around the arena. This is easily the most tense moment of the fight, as it evokes the same emotions felt during our previous chases. Something that I adore about this fight is that Core utilizes a mixture of his metalhead powers and his weird bug features. When he's not spawning more metalheads onto the field, he'll use his stinger to attack and even swat at you with his claws. Then on the metalhead side of things, he can shoot blasts from his skull gem and fire off waves of energy. They went so hard on Core's design, and he really lived up to the hype of being a powerful and abhorrent threat. I really love this kind of sci-fi alien horror that they incorporated into Jak 2. This game is so solid. Last in the series, we're going over Jak 3. I don't have too much to say about this game, but there are a few things that I think are worth noting. Jak 3 is a little strange. It still rolls with the darker tone from the second game, but in like a different kind of way. I feel like Jak 2 was more alien, and Jak 3 is more Mad Max alien hybrid, if that makes sense. In Jak 3, Jak is banished from Haven City and sent out into the wasteland. He's eventually rescued by a group of people that have made a home in the desert. The city, known as Spargus, is real small when compared to Haven City, but one thing Spargus has over Haven City is an open ocean, free for anyone brave enough to venture off through it. When I first saw the open waters beyond the wasteland desert, I knew it had to be done. It was time to see what awaited me beneath the waves. So I went for it. Yeah, this time around it's a giant kraken. Unlike the lurker shark, the kraken is completely unexplained. No idea if it's a lurker, a metalhead, or something else entirely. I honestly can't decide which is worse. The Wasteland also has their own form of metalheads. We hear about them briefly in Jak 2, but in this entry we finally get to see the infamous Wasteland metalheads. These things are enormous. I'll never forget my complete and utter shock when I saw these things for the first time. At first I was really scared of them, but after a while I stopped being scared and I just thought they were super cool. They look awesome. They're like big dinosaurs. The scariest thing about the metalheads in this entry is how they've continued to survive even after Core's been defeated. It's kind of really unsatisfying knowing that your efforts from Jak 2 only bought Haven City a brief moment of peace. It doesn't take long for the metalheads to come back even stronger and continue their assault on the city. Speaking of Haven City, after a while Jak and Daxter will be able to re-enter the city, and somehow things are much worse than they were in the second game. Now the metalheads have actually managed to take over the west side of the city. The garden and bazaar areas from before have now been formed into a new home for the metalheads. This area is full of green sludge, biological structures, and dozens of metalhead eggs. It is a cesspool, and it really illustrates how resilient the metalheads truly are. It's something about that bright green coloring really evokes heavy alien energy. And as if things weren't bad enough, there's a new threat to worry about: the Crimson Guard Deathbots. These enemies appear in Jak 2, but they're really not mentioned all too often. After Baron Praxis was killed by Core, these bots formed together under a new leader, who we'll talk about in a bit. In Jak 3, there's more emphasis placed on the bots as they work in tandem with the metalheads to attack Haven City. The bots themselves aren't all too scary, they're just basic robot enemies. However, there's a creepy Easter egg that can happen during the Defend HQ from Attack mission. During the mission, there's a rare chance of a giant deathbot appearing. From what little footage I've seen, it chases you around until the mission is complete. I've seen some sources claim that the deathbot is likely an unfinished enemy or unused boss that was tossed in last minute as a fun little Easter egg. I can't imagine the terror of being on your third or fourth playthrough of Jak 3, seeing something like that, and just being unable to recreate that moment. That sounds like a nightmare. This Easter egg also just sounds like such a Mew under the truck or Ella's real type of playground rumor, and I love it for that alone. The Deathbots themselves are led by Errol, a character from Jak 2. Errol, along with Praxis, were responsible for conducting the Dark Eco experiments on Jak. At the end of the Class 1 race in Jak 2, Errol ends up dying in one of the dumbest ways possible.
I win, Jak.
Why did he do that? However, Errol reappears in Jak 3 as a cyborg. Turns out he didn't die at the end of the Class 1 race, and instead he was enhanced with all this tech. Cyber Errol looks horrifying. A majority of Errol's body has been replaced by metal, with only half of his face remaining organic. It gives off the impression that he's losing touch with whatever pieces of humanity he has left within himself, and it's likely a result of his communication with the Darkmakers, which we'll talk about next. So, alongside the metalheads and KG deathbots, there's another malevolent force at play. Precursors corrupted by Dark Eco are known as Darkmakers, and as creepy as they are as a concept, I feel like they don't get to reach their full potential in Jak 3. Having to share the spotlight with the KG deathbots, the metalheads, and their new Wasteland variant doesn't give us a lot of time to get acquainted with the Darkmakers. We get to fight a few of the Dark Satellites throughout the story, but evil satellite isn't exactly what keeps me up at night. I feel like Jak 3 just really needed some more time to bake in the oven. Not even just talking about the horror aspects specifically, I mean like in general. The game just feels like it's more of Jak 2, and that's okay. I just wanted it to be more of its own thing. It's whatever, this isn't a review. I just wanted to provide some explanation as to why the Jak 3 section of this video is the shortest of the three. Don't get it twisted though, I liked Jak 3, I just wanted to love Jak 3. Also, Jak 3 brings back Sig. It turns out he didn't die from that metal centipede in the second game. Does that scene from Jak 2 feel a little pointless now? Kinda, but I don't care because I really like Sig. That was all of the horror elements I could scrounge up from the first 3 games in the Jak and Daxter series. I mostly wanted to focus on these 3 games because they were the ones I grew up with, but if you all want to see a video with the other games in the series, definitely let me know. I personally think that the Daxter spinoff looks really interesting. I also had a really great time working on this video because I had never sat down and completed all 3 games before. After doing that, I can really feel the potential in this series, and man, I want a new Jak and Daxter so bad. Let me know if there are any other non-horror games you can think of with their own spooky elements, and we may end up talking about them on another episode of Occult in the Ordinary. Anyways, thank you all so much for the support. I've loved seeing the amount of people who have just been able to relate to my absolute terror for the Sly Cooper games, and it's just so validating. I really hope that there's someone out there who never goes anywhere near water because of the lurker shark. Because same. Alright, that's all I have for you guys. Take care.